Good morning. Welcome to Centennial College's Story Arts Center for our 2023 Remembrance Day ceremony, a tradition that goes back 20 years here at the school. My name is Malcolm Kelly, and I'm a professor here at the school, and I would like to take this moment, first of all, to introduce a few people. Our colors were marched in. They were from Royal Canadian Legion Branch 10, which is our local Todmorden branch. They were led by Regimental Sergeant Major Woon Yong Chung, South Korean Navy, and Sergeant in Arms Bruce K. Smith. Our piper this morning is Scott Russell, who is the pipe major with the Toronto Police Services Pipe Band. You know, it's very interesting because whenever I hear the pipes, it reminds me that the tradition of bagpipes, the tradition of using a bagged instrument, oh, I'm sorry, please, you can sit. Reminds me that the tradition of using a bagged instrument goes back to the 2nd century in the time of Emperor Nero. People played bagpipes for centuries throughout large parts of Europe, Northern Africa, Western Asia, around the Persian Gulf, and in parts of the north section of South Asia. I would like now, please, just to very quickly introduce our very special military guests as we honor Women in Remembrance. Major Lisa Nodwell of the Canadian Army, 2nd Lieutenant Jade Bloemen of the Canadian Army, Sergeant Alisha Fisher, Medal of Bravery, Royal Canadian Air Force, and Petty Officer 1 Joan Emode, Canadian Navy. I'd also like to welcome a regular visitor for us is our MPP, Mr. Peter Tabbins. He has always been a very strong supporter of what we do here, and we thank him. Our theme here today at Women in Remembrance fits very well, actually, for both Peter and I. Peter's father, Anton, was from Latvia, and he escaped the Soviet occupation there after living through the Nazi occupation. And he made his way to England. His mother, Sarah, was born and raised in Liverpool, England. And his mother was a survivor of the Blitz on Liverpool and Merseyside. They were the 2nd most heavily bombed city in England in the Second World War. My mother, Nora Mae DeLong, was a survivor of the Bristol Blitz, had her house blown out from around her and survived by hiding under the stairs with my stepmother in November of 1940. You can always find people who have something in common with you on days like this. I'd also like to recognize Vice President Marilyn Harry from Centennial College and our Dean Nate Horowitz, Dean of the School of Communication, Media, Arts, and Design. I would also like to take this moment to say that on the 8th of November was Indigenous Veterans Day. Our veterans, our Indigenous veterans, go back all the way to the War of 1812. And they have an incredible, incredible history of fighting for this land. And they come together on the 8th to recognize for themselves what has been given. I would like to ask Samantha Sarrazin, who is a student at Centennial College's Music, Industry, Arts, and Performance program, to please come forward for O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all our sons' command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God, keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Color Guard retreat. So we have a small delay. I am sorry I forgot to bring this out with me today. Centennial College is proud to be a part of a rich history of education in this province and the city. We acknowledge that we are on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and pay tribute to their legacy and the legacy of all First Peoples of Canada as we strengthen ties with the communities we serve and build the future through learning and through our graduates. Today, the traditional meeting place of Toronto is still home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work in the communities that have grown in the treaty lands of the Mississaugas. We acknowledge that we are all treaty people and accept our responsibility to honor all our relations. If you would sit, please. Today, as I mentioned, we are honoring Women and Remembrance. And we come together today to remember those across many generations. We remember Section Officer Irene Watson, RCAF, who is from New Toronto, which is south of Etobicoke. Irene was going to be a journalist. She was already working at the age of 20 for the Globe and Mail as a local correspondent. And she joined the Royal Canadian Air Force and became an administration officer. On November the 8th, 1943, she boarded a Canso aircraft, which is, for others, a Catalina. It's a PBY, and was flying to Botwood, Newfoundland on business. When they got on the aircraft, there were more passengers than they had expected, so there weren't enough life jackets for everyone. So the crew of the aircraft gave up their life jackets and gave them to the passengers, just to be careful, because it was their responsibility. That Canso aircraft coming into land in Botwood on the water crashed. And because of the way that the aircraft crashed, nose down with one wing up, the aircraft began to fill with water. And in one of the great ironies of military history, which is filled with great ironies, everybody who had a life jacket died. Those who did not escaped. And that's because when the life jackets were inflated, they floated to the top and could not get out the hatches below them. The plane sank and has never been found. And she is honored in Ottawa. We remember today Corporal Karine Marie Natasha Blais from Quebec. On April the 13th, 2009, in the Shah Wali Kot district of Afghanistan, at the end of just her second week in Afghanistan, she was killed by an IED. And we remember her. We remember Captain Jennifer Casey, RCAF, who while working as a communications officer, the head of communications for the Snowbird display team in 2020, was in the back seat when they took off to go to from Kamloops to go somewhere else. The aircraft barely got into the air. Engines flamed out. They ejected. The pilot landed on the roof of a house and was severely injured. Captain Casey did not survive the impact of the landing. And we remember Captain Casey. We also remember the mothers, and we have one here today, of all those who go off to war, the mothers and spouses. It is my deep honor to be at this time working on what I call the Easter Collegiate Memory Project, where I'm researching and writing historical vignettes on all 125 young men who gave their lives during the Second World War from Easter Collegiate, which is where I went. We're up to 43 now, and we'll be ready by 27, which is our 100th anniversary. But when you go through and you start to research the actual stories behind the names, you learn something about who these young men were. But you also discover the letters home and the letters that were sent to them. And the mothers, just in the RCAF, in Bomber Command, Canadian mothers, 10,000 of them sent their young men off to war, and they never came home. And they lived with that for the rest of their lives. And we remember and honor those women. We also remember and honor the women who worked in the factories in the Second World War. This school, Centennial College, was founded on Warden Avenue in what had been a radar factory in the Second World War. 90% of the staff there were women working in war industries. And we remember them too for how much effort they put in. Just in Toronto, war industries all over the place. Out at Malton, at Toronto, at what is now Pearson International Airport, all of the women who worked at Victory Aircraft, all of the women who worked at de Havilland, building mosquito fighter bombers. We remember those two. I would now like to ask, on behalf of Centennial College, Dean Nate Horowitz to come forward to give a greeting.
Thank you, Malcolm. On behalf of the School of Communications, Media Arts and Design, we welcome our students, our guests, and most importantly, for this remembrance event. Thank you.
And I would like to now take the opportunity to introduce you to our special guest today. Looking up my notes. Check. Oh, wrong one. Such a professional act. Okay. Madam, please welcome Sergeant Alisha Fisher. Thank you very much for joining us today. You have been in the Air Force for how long?
I've been in the Air Force for 18 years.
Okay. And what is your job has been in the Air Force for most of that?
I am an aviation technician and primarily focusing on the F-18.
Okay. So, and you have spent most of your time at Cold Lake, Alberta, which is which is an interesting place because it's one of those places where the name tells you everything you need to know. It's by a lake, and it's cold. Yes. And your job at Cold Lake?
I was an aircraft mechanic, or I am an aircraft mechanic. When I was in Cold Lake, I worked on the F-18, and it's the biggest fighter jet base in Canada.
And you are able to take apart a jet engine and put it back together again in about 15 minutes?
Oh, that's right. Give or take.
Give or take.
A couple hours.
Right. Now, you were saying that when you got there, there were just a handful of women who were working in the air that you were working in.
Absolutely. Aircraft mechanic is not a very feminine trade, so there were only, at the time when I joined and started working in Cold Lake, there were only about 2 other females in the unit that were working on the floor.
And I think you were saying that you were the only one specifically working on engines.
Yes, I was the only mechanic for my, I was the only one in my specialty.
Right. And you then became an instructor.
Yes, I worked as an instructor for landing gear, flight controls, and engines for 4 years.
And they've now sent you up to Camp Borden near Barrie, Ontario, and what are you doing there?
Currently, I am a course director, so I'm managing all the instructors for the journeyman course for the aircraft mechanics.
How cold is Cold Lake?
Currently, I believe like a -18 right now.
And what's the coldest you remember it being at Cold Lake working? And I should point out, too, that the sergeant, of course, and her crew, they work down on the flight line. So it's cold. What's the coldest you recall it being?
Well, probably close to -45, I'd say. It's a dry cold.
I think the Air Force is coming by. No, that's an orange ambulance. Now, when it gets too cold at Cold Lake, they send you off where it's warm, do they not?
Yes, normally twice a year we'll go to either California, Florida, Texas, places that are a lot warmer for about 6 weeks at a time to get our pilots trained up and get some operations in.
And on one of your trips to California, a group of you went to the beach. Somebody missed the danger undertow sign, and what happened?
So one of my colleagues ended up getting caught in a riptide, and everyone was a little shocked, and I ended up going and saving him. Swam the riptide, kept him afloat for about 15 minutes until the lifeguard came out, and then swam back on my own.
And you swam back, so you saved his life. Yes. And for that, you wear a Medal of Bravery.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was awarded the Medal of Bravery in 2017 from the Governor General, Julie Payette.
And I warned you that this was coming. What does Remembrance Day mean to you?
So Remembrance Day to me is a reminder that our freedom isn't free. It's an opportunity to reflect and to take a moment and thank all of the members that have served, and to thank the parents, the children, the spouses. Not so much to focus just on the ones who we lost, but also it's normally to serve. It's about a 6-month deployment at a time, and there's a significant amount of men and women who spend a lot of time away from their families to serve our country. So it's an opportunity to thank them for for their time away from their family, for the experiences they have to go through, and to thank the spouses for supporting them to serve and to protect our country.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you, sir.
And I thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Petty Officer 1, Joan Emode. And how are you this morning?
I'm well, sir. How are you?
And I see the Navy's here.
Navy is here.
For those, it's a story I'd love to tell. The Navy, the phrase, the Navy's here, which especially in the Royal Navy is a very famous phrase. Back in 1940, the Royal Navy rescued a bunch of merchant sailors who'd been captured by the Grosh Bay off of a supply ship known as Altmark that was hiding down a fjord in Norway. And it was actually the first time in 100 years that anybody had actually boarded an enemy ship. And they raced downstairs downstairs is not correct naval parlance, is it? No, sorry. They raced down a few decks and found where they were being captured, blew open the door, and somebody yelled, "The Navy's here!" And that became sort of like the famous phrase for the Navy. So we're very proud and pleased to have you.
Thank you very much.
Now, you are originally from Nigeria, and you came here as a youngster.
Yes, my parents are both born in Lagos, Nigeria. I was born there as well. I'm their eldest child. And we immigrated together to Canada years ago.
And you went to Windsor.
That's where I remember growing up, yes, with
Right,
my
to
family.
Windsor.
Yes.
And what high school did you go to?
I went to Kennedy Collegiate High School.
Right. And as you were going through high school, you had... That's a ship leaving the harbor, just in case you were wondering. Bon voyage. You were going through high school, and you had something you were thinking about. How are you going to pay for your education?
That is correct.
Yes, and what did you come up with as a solution?
So my father's solution was I should join the military. In Windsor, Ontario, you can only join the Army Reserves or the Navy Reserves, so I chose the Navy Reserves at the time.
And then after you finished high school, then you went directly into the Navy?
While I was actually in high school, I joined the Naval Reserves and then carried on with the Naval Reserves throughout university and college.
Right. And then you went to college, and I've been holding this one, folks. And then you went to college, and which college did you choose to go to?
So when I moved to Toronto about now approximately 13, 14 years ago, I chose Centennial College, Scarborough campus.
And at Centennial College, you studied?
One of the most difficult programs of my career, which was paramedic, and I graduated.
And you graduated from there, and then you went full-time into the Navy?
That is correct.
Right. And you have you have completed your naval service. Everybody in the Navy has to go to sea at some point. And you went on HMCS Winnipeg, which is a frigate.
Yes, so HMCS Winnipeg is stationed in Victoria, BC. That's the home port. So I sailed for 9 months and did 4 different operations international.
And your operations actually, perhaps we can show everyone, your operations are actually on your medal bar here. Perhaps you could explain what these are.
Okay. So one of the main operation was Operation Active Endeavor. So that is a NATO deployment in which we were doing maritime security in Eastern and Central Europe. Another operation was Operation Carib. That is the drug trafficking and organizational crime and the Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean Sea. And then the other operation was Task Force Artemis and Task Force Projection, in which we're doing multi-international joint exercises with our allied naval forces.
And Joan, your job now?
So right now I'm stationed in Quebec City. I work for Personnel Coordination Center, Quebec, and my trade is Human Resources Administrator, but now I'm a career manager for the Naval Reserves, amongst other things in Quebec City.
So if any of you young folks out there would like to join the Navy, please see Joan afterwards, and she will help you. I thank you for your service.
Thank you for letting me be here today.
Well, the last time we saw you was a year ago at this very ceremony when you were in other rank. And please welcome Jade Bloemen. And I'm looking for your mom, and I can't
She's the one with the camera over there.
Oh, she's the one with the camera over there? And Jade brought her mom. Hi, Mom. Because we're also honoring moms today who have their children in the military. So, a lot's happened to you in the last year. So just as a little backup, you are a tanker, and perhaps you could explain what that means.
So when I first joined the military, I started off as a tank driver or just armored vehicle driver in general. They're not all considered tanks. And then as I went through my training, I got qualified on multiple different kinds of guns. And now that I've gone through my commission, I'm in the process of learning how to command a crew inside the armored vehicles as well as 4 vehicles at a time.
And you're also a graduate. You were also a graduate of the driving school at Fort Benning in the United States?
Yes, I've been down to Fort Benning twice to learn how to use the M1A1 Abrams and the M2 Bradley.
So, if I might ask, because it seems like an obvious question, how much fun is it driving a tank?
It's a blast. It's a lot of fun. I'm lucky that I'm not one of those 6'2" guys because I've got lots of legroom in there, which is important for sure. And if you get one with like working air conditioning, it's pretty nice, but that's very rare as well.
Right. So when we saw you last, as I said, you were in other rank and you were just coming into your second year at Royal Military College in Kingston. Having completed your second year and you've now moved into your third year, you've also moved up in rank. So your rank now is?
I'm a second lieutenant. Last time I was here, I was just a trooper. So
Troopers, as the son of a career sergeant major, troopers are very important. Yes.
I'd like to think so.
Yes. And you've heard all the jokes about second lieutenants.
Unfortunately.
Yes. For your military lore, the rank that gets the most jokes about them is second lieutenant. I won't tell you any of the jokes, but yes, second lieutenant. And so what is ahead for you?
I'm going to complete my last 2 years at Royal Military College as a chemistry major. I'm hoping to go on some trade courses with the military in New Brunswick, Gagetown this summer. And then hopefully work. I'm thinking about going to paramedics college or going to vet school. I haven't decided what's after graduation, but I've got 2 years, so.
Yes. Well, congratulations, and as always, and again, thank you very much for your service, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. One other thing. Can I borrow your tank?
I need to see some ID or something.
Oh, okay, sorry. And the senior officers are here. Both my parents were Second World War combat veterans, and my father, who was a career sergeant major, he always told me to be careful around majors. So today, I'm going to be very careful around Major Lisa Nodwell. Welcome.
Thank you.
You have been in for how many years?
22 years.
And your unit?
Right now I'm at the Canadian Forces College here in Toronto doing Command and Staff College. Prior to this, I was with 5 Division.
Right. Now, you have a very fascinating educational background. Perhaps you could run us through your fascinating educational background.
So my education isn't completely related to my career in artillery. I started out doing a Bachelor of Science here at University of Toronto, graduated doing biology and evolutionary biology into a master's at McGill University in biological oceanography. After that, I worked at the Institute of Ocean Sciences, and I did a subarctic cruise, one of the HMCS icebreakers, studying oceanography. And then after that, I decided to join the Army.
And were you diving when you were in the Arctic?
No, we had to wear our survivor suits, and thankfully I did not have to touch any water except that which we pulled up.
No, I'm just, because, it's always nice to be able to tease a major just a little bit in public. There is a small problem with you being an oceanographer, wasn't there?
Yes, I actually get very ocean sick and seasick and motion sick, so I am definitely built for the land.
Right. And your job is in artillery. I think it was 2006 you deployed to Afghanistan?
Yeah, in 2005 until 2006, that's correct.
Okay, and what was your job in Afghanistan?
I trained as a mortar troop commander. However, they changed our mission to provincial reconstruction team, and I deployed as a personal assistant to the commander and what they call the adjutant, or the primary, your chief administration officer, for the 250-person company that deployed.
And while that sounds like an office job, it wasn't. And you had to spend a fair amount of time in harm's way, and going out into the field and being very careful to avoid the IEDs. Could you explain about that for me, please, and what about that part of your job?
Yeah, I think because Afghanistan is a place where we know that there's differences between how men and women and children are treated. There were a lot of security details there. They needed to scan children and women for security, but that's not something that is culturally acceptable for a man to do. So I conducted a lot of security details and a lot of patrols where we went out to visit hospitals, jails where there are women, and just to make sure that any cordons that we had, that I was able to check the women and children to make sure that they're safe to pass through the line of security.
And you were also telling me that one of your unit was hit by an IED and was able to survive because he was in such superior physical shape.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, I know that it's one of these days physical fitness is something that we don't say is required for the military, but one of the combat engineers that got hit by an IED was in the hospital, and the doctor had said that because he was in such good physical shape before he was struck and injured, that was what ultimately saved his life.
And may I ask, as my last question, how does one prepare, or can one prepare, to go into harm's way when you have not been there before?
I think what you have to do is you have to believe in your teammate, you have to believe in your fire team partner and the training that you get here. And if you can believe in that, I think you just will rely on your training to bring you to react when you have to react. And I think that for me personally, the idea that what I'm doing is not just for my own personal interest and my own personal meaning, but it has meaning for our national interest, for Canadians, and for the nation that we're supporting.
And may I ask, what does Remembrance Day mean to you?
Well, for me, Remembrance Day is when I think about it, I look back into sort of what I've done in my life, and the military has very much been my family. And it has been the reason that I feel it has meaning to me is because I am giving of myself to my country. Stewardship is very important to me, and so I feel that this reminds me of why I do the job. As you can imagine, the military is a little bit bureaucratic at times, and so I spend a lot of my days
So's the school.
doing paperwork. But Remembrance Day reminds me of why I do this. It reminds me of the people that I see that are benefiting from what I am doing. It also reminds me to be so thankful for the freedom that I have to serve as a woman that was given to me by those who fought before me.
And I am sorry, I do have one more. I forgot about it. And that was actually towards what you just said. For young women who are considering a career in the military in Canada, Canada's military, what would you say to them about the life that you can have in it, the opportunities, and what they might be looking at?
I think the military offers a really great career for anybody who chooses it, man or woman or otherwise alike. I think for me, I would say I've worked with about 96% men. There's only about 300 to 400 women in combat arms in total. And I have been extremely well supported by them. And I think what you have to remember is if you are confident and you're able to stand by your own beliefs and you're able to advocate for those beliefs that you have, you will be well supported by your peers. And I really believe that if you have something that you want to say and you want to do, that the military can allow you to do that, whether that's in my trade, in the Army as a combat arms officer, or if that's as an aviation mechanic like Alisha, or if that's as a human resource administrator like Joan.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your service, Major Lisa Nodwell. Before we get to the next step, I would like to recognize somebody who has snuck in here, tried to quietly sneak in. The Remembrance Day ceremonies here at our school were begun by Ted Barris, who is a 20-time best-selling author in Canada and I believe our finest military history historian. He is a great friend and my mentor, and please welcome Ted Barris. Color guard. In a moment, we will be moving into last post, 2 minutes of silence, lament, and rouse. And I like to explain to people what they actually mean. The last post is a calling in from the battlefield of the dead. It is as it says, their last post, and that's what it is for. And then it's followed by 2 minutes of silence for us, all of us, to remember those who have served in our forces and given their lives. The lament, which you will hear from the piper, the lament is represents the tears and the sorrow of the families who have lost a loved one. The rouse, which is on the trumpet, is actually a mourning call. That's M-O-R-N-I-N-G, a mourning of the day call. And it tells us that we must now go back about our lives. I now ask our Vice President, Marilyn Harry, to come to the front. Marilyn is going to read the Act of Remembrance, the last line of which is, "We will remember them." When Marilyn says, "We will remember them," after that, please repeat that line.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them. Thank you. In the summer of 1915, during the Second Battle of Ypres, a doctor from Montreal named John McCrae, who had just lost his best friend the day before, finished off an incredibly long run of surgeries and walked outside and sat by the grave of his friend. It struck him at that time that no matter how much destruction there was on the Western Front, in Flanders, which is in Belgium, the poppies always grew. No matter how much you turned over the earth, the poppies always grew. He took out a piece of paper and he wrote down some lines. Just at that moment, a motorcycle dispatch rider from Uxbridge, Ontario, came by with a note. And Dr. McCrae showed it to him and said, "What do you think of this?" And the dispatch rider read it and said that he thought it was brilliant. He gave it back to Dr. McCrae, who said, "It's all useless," rolled it up into a ball and dropped it on the ground, turned around and went back. The dispatch rider picked it up, drove back to his headquarters and showed it to his commanding officer, and said to him, "This is brilliant." And the commanding officer sent it off to London, to the London Gazette. They turned it down. And then it was sent off to Punch magazine in London, and they printed it. And it became the most famous poem of the First World War, and something that we continue to use now. Then Lieutenant Colonel McCrae did not survive the war. In 1918, shortly after he was made the head of all medical services for Canada's Army, he died of pneumonia. So he never lived to understand or see how important his poem was. And now, in Flanders Fields. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow beneath the crosses, row on row that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. I now invite back to the rostrum Samantha Sarazin of our music program for God Save the King. The second time we have sung God Save the King, by the way, at Remembrance Day since the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
God save our gracious King, God save our noble King, God save the King. Send him victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us. God save the King.
We now come to the end of our ceremony. Our piper will lead the color guard and our special guests out. I would like to thank all of you for coming. I'd like to thank everybody in the Story Arts Center who has done such a great job helping us put this together. I would absolutely like to thank our broadcast folks under Roya McLeish today and his incredible team, which is very large and is everywhere, for their wonderful job with our live broadcast today. Next year, we will our Remembrance Day ceremony will be on Monday, November the 11th. And we hope because we can't do it on the Sunday, and we hope to see you then. Piper Russell, please. Yeah, just send them. Color guard.